I'm Alpesh, Doshi. So I'm a fintech entrepreneur. I've been doing fintech ventures since about 2001 when fintech wasn't invented and my startup failed. So trying to change the industry in 2001 was pretty hard because nobody got what we were trying to do, which was helping do dealing and settlement for funds, if anybody knows what that means. So since then, wind forward to recently, we have a number of fintech ventures. We've got a fintech venture in Africa, which is around financial inclusion and banking for the unbanked. So compliance and regulation in those countries is almost non-existent or very little. We're adding, we're doing new technologies. You mentioned blockchain, so we're doing things like providing identity on the blockchain as part of the AML KYC process. So if you're talking about cross-border payments, one of the biggest things is how do you know who you're sending your money to? So we're helping try to solve that problem. And we're building an asset management business in the UK in a marketplace model. So I don't know if not everybody knows what marketplaces are, but it's a basic getaway from having a balance sheet and using the traditional fund management industry model, but to help investors get alpha, i.e. get returns, but also help them reach new economy companies because they can't reach them easily today. So all of the stuff these guys have talked about are all relevant to us, and it's quite interesting because one of the key principles of what we're doing is building a digital end-to-end model to make sure that we're reducing the cost of doing business, we're making it more efficient to do business in general, using big data analytics to drive new risk models. Which is quite interesting from a regulatory perspective, because if we're building new risk models, the regulator's going to go, how do you assess the risk and wanting to understand it. Luckily, my background is in financial services, so all the compliance, I'm not an expert in compliance, but I know that it is actually pretty important if you want to do business in whatever jurisdiction you're in. My wife is a chief privacy officer at FTSE 100, so excellent. Unfortunately I live with GDPR every day. She's going on about it every day, so that's
lucky you.
Yes. So I know a lot about GDPR as well, and so all of the stuff the guys have been talking about is quite interesting for me. Hearing about some of the things that you said about the sandbox, which is quite interesting for me. So I'm like, oh, we're going to avoid them then. We're going to avoid the FCA and sandbox. Just get on with it. But I agree with you. For me, compliance is something. To be able to do business, you need to be compliant with the laws of the country. And if you don't embed that into the process of doing business, then you're going to get screwed. And so for me, compliance is everybody. The compliance officer sits in every meeting around any product development, any kind of business model, because they can just say you can't do that. So for me, I do understand it, and as you know, and as all of us know, most people don't think about that. They just think they can build anything and it'll be fine. Now, the interesting thing for us is, which we'd love to hear about from you guys, is some of the business models we're creating are very different to what exists today in the market, and that's my worry, in the sense that we've got these new business models, and we don't want to be the first to do it, because the problem is if you're the first, then the FCA is going to go, whoa, what are you doing? Which obviously kills your business, slows it down. They want to know what you're doing. They want to get involved, which slows down the process. So that's my worry, is that as we grow what we're doing here, being able to be compliant, but without having get the regulator slow you down. So there we are. What else can I say? One of the biggest areas I think about around compliance and around financial services is the use of data and analytics. And today I was at a conference earlier in Canary Wharf, where I was running a blockchain panel. I got another 5 minutes. Wow, that's scary. And it was interesting about the fact that the use of data is so badly done in most organizations, in most banks. And for us, it's the foundation for everything. And even in compliance, if you do compliance reporting, if you build it right and you provide that data analytics layer, being able to then report to the regulator in real time is doable. So, there we go.
Perfect. Thanks. So, any questions for Alpesh? Experiences from Africa, perhaps?
It's carte blanche. It's fantastic. So the interesting thing is we're working with KPMG in Africa to help the regulators and the central bank build the regulation they need to regulate what we're doing, which is quite interesting.
Check I've understood. You're writing the rules.
well, KPMG are writing the rules. We're just helping them sort of say, here's what we're trying to do. Can you make the rules work?
Great. We have a question.
Sure thing. Based on that, what's the difference between working with the regulator in Africa and working with regulators here? What's the cultural difference?
Oh, well, lack of maturity. I mean, ultimately, and all the things that you're doing out there, like financial inclusion, yes. At the moment, we're in Zambia, but we're going across different countries in Africa, and it's also it's emerging markets, so it's not just Africa, it's other places. But the maturity of the kind of things like identity on the blockchain, they've never even heard of it, they don't know what it is. So you have to build and help them understand. And nobody else has done it. I mean, I think Estonia is the only country that's done anything like this. So the good thing is somebody's done it, so you can just point to them and say, look, this is what they did in Estonia, which is great. You're not starting from scratch. But yeah, from it's a lot more mature in Europe and the Western world. Maturity is just not there. But the interesting thing is they have a desire to be mature on their regulatory environments. They have absolutely a desire to do that.
Perfect. Thanks. So if we could get a hand, please, for everyone who's spoken so far.